A delegation led by Water and Sanitation Minister Senzo Mchunu has visited flood-hit areas in the Vaal today. Scores of people have been displaced following the recent floods and the opening of the sluice gates to ease pressure in the Vaal Dam. This led to a number of properties being damaged in the area. Our reporter Manqoba Mchunu following that story for us and checking out the visit of Minister Mchunu a little bit area. Manqoba, good afternoon. Welcome to today. So what did the minister have to say?
But then the minister was essentially visiting some of those that have been affected by the floods and just speaking to residents as well there to get a sense of the devastation and a feel of the devastation that occurred here, and also just visiting some of the infrastructure, the Vaal Dam as well as the barrage, which are all under the water department as well as rainwater, just to assess the infrastructure there. Of course, you recall, Patan, that there was some blame that was being apportioned to the department by some of the residents who claimed that it was in fact the delay in opening of the sluice gates that resulted in the flooding that we saw. Some saying that there was not enough communication, there was given warnings that were given to people to evacuate their homes, which led to many of them having to be rescued from their homes, and the disaster that we saw really here on the ground. But the minister here this morning saying that he has been getting feedback from the officials at the Vaal Dam as well as the barrage, and according to his assessment, he says that but then all protocols and all procedures were followed accordingly when it comes to the opening of the sluice gate. You recall, but then that there was also suggestions that the opening of the sluice gates had resulted in the flooding. He says that this was not the case. In fact, according to the reports that is seen, and which can also be given evidence with some of the reports that he had seen. He says that what contributed to the flooding in this area was the flash flooding that we saw on some of the tributaries, which include the Rietspruit as well as the Klip Rivier. Those were some of the rivers that had flooded that ultimately caused that situation that we saw. It was not per se the opening of the sluice gates. In fact, he says that as a department they had to open those sluice gates to relieve the pressure, or else there would have been a bigger catastrophe taking place in this particular area. So the minister saying that they followed all the procedures. He's happy with how the officials had handled the situation, and therefore he says that as a department they feel that they've done everything right, and that this disaster was not as a result of the opening of those gates. But earlier on I spoke to the minister where we asked him about the issue of accountability, and this is what he had to say.
Now you talk accountability, and Rainwater has accounted to us. DWS officials have done so. The leader of this committee has done so. So everybody, it's not just a one-way thing when it is mentioned, so that people must then start saying, is government accountable? Government, there's no doubt about it, remains accountable. And we need to be even told to account more where we are not aware, or because we want to reach the highest levels that are humanly possible of accountability. Now, if there is somebody whose property was damaged, of course, and we need to engage, we need to talk, we need to look at where they are, what happened. But as I said earlier on, there's something unusual that happened, where people might think that it was just the opening of the gates that affected them or their property. It is not necessarily exactly the same. It's not exactly that. There are those two rivers whose levels went up in an unusual way, in a way that has never been seen.
And Manqoba, of course, I mean, the residents there will be hoping for some support. Did the minister say anything about his view of what's being done so far?
Well, but then the minister is saying that, of course, as a department, they take accountability, collective accountability. They're saying that it's not only an issue that, had to do with the department, but also, some of the people that have built along the flood lines. Of course, we know, Praten, that there is a 100-year flood line where residents should not build in those areas because they will be susceptible to flooding if it does occur. So the minister is saying that there were quite a number of residents that have built along this red line, he calls it, and he says that this is something that they are looking into to try and see whether there would be some sort of better, reaction going forward, and possibly even looking at the possibility that some of those residents might be moved. He did not say that they are going to be moved, but he says that this is one of the issues that they're also looking into. But as far as responsibility is concerned, but then the minister is saying that the government is going to try and assist as best as possible, but they won't be taking any responsibility for the losses that has occurred here because of this particular flooding, because it was a man-made, not a man-made disaster rather, but it was a natural, phenomenon that had happened here, that had hit this particular area. And he was saying, Praten, that, they would be working with officials here on the ground as well as community leaders to try and improve perhaps where they were lacking in terms of communication, if there was not enough, but also in terms of how they dealt with this whole situation. But in terms of responsibility, the minister saying that the department wouldn't be taking any responsibility as per se for the damages that have been incurred. But take a listen to what Mchunu had to say.
We're satisfied with what is happening in the Vaal Dam. Of course, there will always be areas of improvement here and there, but all the fundamental things, all the good things that need to be there to ensure a high level of managing that dam are there. And I want to assure the public all the necessary equipment there and infrastructure and operational instruments there are all functional. That is your gates, your valves, your everything is functional, not just to made ready for me, but there are records that we were shown that they are functional.